Next, I would like to introduce our speaker for this evening's program. Wayne Connell is the founder and president of the Invisible Disabilities Association. He established IDA in 1996 out of the desire to educate friends and family about his wife Chiari's debilitating illness. Soon afterwards, people around the globe began sending emails sharing how IDA had changed their relationship with their loved ones. He co-authored the book, But You Look Good, How to Encourage and Understand People Living with Illness and Pain, with over 30,000 copies in print. Wayne's background fueled his passion for helping people living with illness, pain, and disability. His experience includes that of a professional, multitasking husband, caregiver with an extensive background in management, media, and technology. This man on a mission quickly launched IDA into a worldwide outreach for millions living with invisible disabilities. Personally, I ordered his book over 10 years ago for myself and my family members when we were going through issues with Chiari and Syringomyelia and those related disorders. I love IDA's message, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this message. This time I'd like to bring up Wayne Connell, Invisible Disabilities.
You know, it was very exciting to actually get a contact from Nancy here, who got me in contact with Kathy to have the opportunity to speak tonight. And I'm really thrilled to do it. And to find out that she had a book, But You Look Good book, from 2006. We looked it up. This is a cover about 2 or 3 covers back, and so we're really excited about that. And of course, I got her a new copy of it. So, and
I can now go read that today.
Right, and we'll have those available in the back afterwards for sale, the books. And I've got a couple of my board members here from my organization, Ali Fisher and Brad Ammon. So, real thrilled to have you guys all here. Wow, invisible disabilities. So I want to talk about the 7 realities of the invisible becoming visible. So what's that first reality of the invisible becoming visible? The first reality is that it's vast, okay? Vast. You know, this is like the whole US here, but it's really around the world. We're going to be talking about some statistics and those things that actually impact the US, and so you can extrapolate those as they go around the world. So we look at all these different terms that come up, and we need to define some of these, right? Because some of the times we hear about these different terms, and we hear of things like stigmas and those things. We want to talk about different terms. There might be some terms in here that might actually offend you or kind of think, it's kind of a weird term. But we want to talk about the term disability to start out with. So disability really is simple. Dictionary.com. Hey, you've got to use the internet for all that stuff, right? Is a disadvantage or a deficiency, especially a physical or mental or something is going on with a brain impairment that interferes with normal life. That's what a disability is. A very simple definition. There's no stigma attached to the word in the sense, if you have a disability, that means something's impaired by it. And a lot of times you can use an assistive device to overcome that disability. Now that's different than the word disabled, right? Disabled means that somebody who is unable to work. That's really what disabled means. Now, there is a little military definition which they talk about different levels of disabledness based upon the military thing, but really disabled means that you're unable to work. Now, neither one of those are bad terms. They're just flat out regular terms. We're also going to talk about that there's things like chronic pain, right? So pain is a big factor that impacts that, as well as chronic illnesses that impact that. So currently there are 309 million Americans. I looked that up today. I wanted to make sure I had that correct. Give or take a few million or 100,000 or whatever, right? So, but actually 149 million Americans have at least one chronic illness. It's almost 50%. So think about it. Everybody in the room, you either have a chronic illness or guess what? You know somebody that does, right? So it's a huge thing. Now, we think chronic illness doesn't necessarily mean disabled. Back to that word we talked about earlier. So what's the number one chronic illness? Hypertension or high blood pressure. That's the number one, in America. And these are just statistics strictly for America, but it's the number one. Number 2 is arthritis. Now, arthritis obviously is made up of a few different things like osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, ankylosing spondylitis, Sjogren's syndrome. It's just like I didn't try to pronounce CSF. It was a whole lot easier to say CSF. Some of these are not necessarily the easiest to pronounce, but Actually, I know how to pronounce all those, and I've heard of all those. So if you bring all those together, that's one of the reasons why that arthritis is such a high impact across the nation. So what's the second reality? Okay, so the first reality is really it's vast, right? It's the number's almost ungraspable. You know, every other person is dealing with a chronic illness. The second reality is that a lot of them are actually invisible. So oftentimes we think about the term disability, right? What do we assume? Wheelchair, walker, you know, we see that symbol, we think about those things. But I don't know if you know that 74% of Americans who live with a severe disability, so that means there's a lot of cases that are disabled, they don't use anything. They don't use any kind of assistive device that you can see. Now, they may use an assistive device like maybe somebody has bipolar disorder and they're using some medicine to help them. I consider that an assistive device, just like we would consider glasses an assistive device, any of those things. But 74% of Americans don't use anything. Right? So we can't tell by looking at them. I look at throughout the room, and I think I saw one walker in here, so that is the only physical manifestation we would see of somebody who might have a disability, right? Also, the term really refers to, when we use the term invisible disabilities, it's not a specific illness. People ask us all the time, how come you don't have our illness on your website? Actually, back when we started our first website, which was back in 1997, we used to put all the illnesses. And when we hit about number 600, and then somebody would say, my illness isn't on there. And then if you're familiar with the National Association of Rare Disorders, or NORD, they have, I think, 3,500 cataloged on there, and they're probably not even scratching the surface, in a sense, right? So we decided, well, maybe we shouldn't put specific illnesses, because really it's the symptoms of an illness, right? It's brain fog, it's fatigue, it's dizziness, it's pain, it's weakness, cognitive impairments. It's all those things that people can't see of an illness that makes it invisible. You know, and they can occur from many different reasons. It could have been born that way. You could have had an injury. You could have got sick. There's a whole bunch of different ways, but they're not obvious to the onlooker, right? We don't see them. But the reality is that it's not based upon the fact of we can see them or not see them, right? That's what makes them. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit, because I hear I got, what, 2.5, 3 hours, something like that? Yeah. Okay, great. The traffic will be died down by the time we get done with this, at least. So what is the third reality? So the first one, you know, was vast, and the second one was that it's invisible. And the third one is actually has to do with society, right? So what does society have to do with disabilities? Okay, so you're at the store, grocery store, and you're just pulling in, and there's this person walking across the crosswalk, right? You're like going, hurry up, please. You know, I'm in a hurry to what, get in your parking spot, right? Or something, right? I'm in a hurry. And they're like, they're walking so slow. You know, some people even honk, right? Okay, the crosswalk's not that long, but they're, you know, unless they're texting or something, you know that you don't know what they're going through. You know, I had a Facebook friend of mine, actually, who put on his Facebook post, and he said, you know, I wish the city of, it was Colorado Springs, would just, there'd be like if somebody's walking across too slow, it would like open up and they drop down and they get a ticket and be in trouble for walking so slow. And I wrote on there, wow, what if they have an invisible disability, right? We don't know. Unbeknownst to me, his daughter then writes on who I didn't know who she, writes on there, like me, Dad. I went, oh my goodness, right? You know, but the reality is we look at those people walking in the crosswalk and we think, they're so slow. You know, why are they taking so long to do that? Well, I'll tell you, part of it is that we love to go shopping, and we have to go shopping, right? We have to go shopping for food, but we also love to go shopping. A lot of, you know, we just got through the holiday season, but think about that. I mean, we want to go out, and a lot of times it's to buy things for ourselves, but a lot of times it's to buy gifts for other people. You know, my mom was always the big gift shopper. I mean, every year, no matter how much money or little money she had, she always found a gift for somebody, right? And that was always the joy of it, finding that little bargain and things. So really, shopping is a big thing that we love to do because it's getting out, right? And many of you know when you have an illness or you're dealing with chronic pain or an invisible disability, that you're trapped at home all the time, right? So it's something that you want to be able to go out and do. So what do we think about with society, right? We got this S from society, and we think, hey, this is the mall parking lot, right? And it's full Christmas time, and you're driving around. And guess what? There's a parking spot. Oh, it's got a little blue thing in it. I can't park there. But the reality is, I should be able to park there, right? I mean, come on, I don't have to walk too far. It's a full parking lot. In fact, you know what? I saw somebody park in that parking spot that's probably not supposed to park there. We'll talk about that in a sec here. But the person gets there and they, we would normally in society, we look and say, hey, okay, we get who's supposed to park there, but what if they're not in a wheelchair, right? We don't see that. The symbol's a wheelchair, right? And why is the symbol a wheelchair? It's for accessibility. That's why they have curb cutouts and they have lines. Doesn't mean they're always that close, right? We talk about that a little bit. But maybe they went inside and they get in this little cart, right? Now, I don't know if any of you have scooters in here. My wife has a scooter. We got it so she could maybe ride on our property. We live on some property. And it's got 13-inch wheels, and it's got headlights, and it goes 8 miles an hour, and it's this crazy thing, right? In fact, we were at the zoo, and she loves elephants, okay? And we're clear across the zoo, and she sees on her little program, says, baby elephant bathing, 5 minutes, right? Okay, so I look around, and she's gone. It's like zoom, 8 miles an hour, zoom. Okay, that's not what these carts do. Okay, they don't go 8 miles an hour. Now, something that's an interesting perception as I was looking for this picture for here is that who's riding in it, right? It's a senior. Great, seniors need carts, but are seniors the only ones that need carts? I've seen ladies that are pregnant that may need a cart, or somebody broke their leg and they're using a cart, but we make the assumption that only people that are seniors should be driving these little carts, because if somebody's in it who's not a senior, maybe when my wife is 27 years old, why should she be riding in the cart? Well, I can tell you what, you're not riding it because it goes 8 miles an hour, because it doesn't go 8 miles an hour. In fact, it goes so slow that the little 4-year-old is staring at it and going, mommy, mommy, and the 4-year-old's walking faster than the cart, right? So that's why I wanted to point out, is really show that scooters are not just for people that are seniors, but the seniors may need them because they have an invisible disability and they have chronic illness and they can't walk as fast or those things. Imagine you go to the store because you want to go shopping, right? It's Christmas time. And you get in the car. You haven't been in the car for a long time, but like I said, it's important to you to go get some gifts. So you invite your niece along to ride in the car with you, so you're not going to the store alone. And you drive there and you get there and you park in a parking spot that we talked about here, right? You park in one of these parking spots because you have the right to park there. And you know how hard it is going to be that you couldn't walk from the end of the parking lot. It was hard enough just to drive the car to get there. But this is so important to you because you want to get that gift. And you go and you shop in your little cart. You get in the store, you drive around really slow, and you get up to the counter and you pay, and you go back out to the car, and you get in your car, and in your rearview mirror is one of these flashing lights going on. And an officer comes up and knocks on the window. You roll down the window. You can't park there. Well, what do you mean I can't park there? Well, you can't park there because you're not disabled. Well, I am. No, you're not. Actually, I have multiple sclerosis. Well, I don't care what multiples of what you've got. You can't park there. I saw you get out of your car and run inside, or saw you run back out to your car, and you can't park there because you're not disabled. But I have this placard. Check it out. I have this placard here. And maybe you ought to move your car. Because one of the things about things like MS, it's a nervous system disorder. Guess what it does? It sends the nerves through the roof as well. And I will tell you, this is a real story. This is my wife's story many, many years ago. And finally telling the officer that it would be best if he'd move his car. Because she was going to throw it in reverse. And of course, his response was, see those people in that Cadillac over there? They're not disabled either. Now, I would say the good news, but not necessarily the good news, is that after calling and contacting the store and finding out who the officer was reprimanded, because the reality is, if you have a placard, right, you have a right to park there. And if many of you have placards in this room, how do you get a placard? It's by a doctor's signature. Now, does your doctor want to commit fraud by giving you a placard for something that you don't deserve to have? No. They really want you to have the placard. But we think about the wheelchair, and if you're not in the wheelchair, we assume this. But see, this one I like the sign. It's disabled parking, right? But that still doesn't tell the whole story, right? What if you have a disability and you're not disabled, but you need to park there because it's too hard for you to walk, or you have lung issues, or you're dealing with a heart condition. You know, all these things that we can't see that legally allow you to get a placard. Remember, 74% of Americans don't have any assistive device. Now, I'll tell you an interesting story about this. I was reading an article that in Los Angeles, there was a reporter who was all excited because he was hanging out down at this business complex where they had 12 disabled parking spots, or accessible parking spots out in front of there. And he said, all 12 of these people are not disabled. Now, in California, you can park free at a meter. There are meters. And you can park all day at a meter, okay? Now, my philosophy on this whole thing is that it's a big office building. Across the street is the big parking garage. Now, think about this. If you can't walk far from your car, you're going to use one of those spots. Now, his arguments were, one, they shouldn't be able to park there all day. Well, can you come running out every 3 hours and put the meter in your little... It's going to be hard enough to get in there in the morning and to get back out, right? So now you're not going to have the time to come back out multiple times. Plus, there's this huge parking garage, but what we forget about accessible spots, and many of you can probably tell me this, they're not accessible for somebody who can't walk very far in a lot of cases. Now, it's great that they actually have the wheelchair cutouts, but a lot of times they're behind the room and they're around the way, and they're very difficult to. So, but we hear this all the time. You've seen the notes, you've seen the horrible notes that people leave on people's, you can't park there because there's nothing wrong with you, and there's a whole lot of things I can't say that come through in these notes because people don't believe people. They think they're making it up, they can't park there because they want to park there. But the reality is if you have the placard or you have a plate, take it up with the DMV. Don't take it up with the person that's right there. We may think they're stealing it from grandma, but the reality is in a lot of cases, in most cases, they're not. If they have the placard or the license, they have the right to park there. So what's the fourth reality? Well, the fourth reality is that they're individual. Okay, so they're vast, they're invisible. We have society's perceptions of what these disabilities are, but they really are is that they're individual, right? Every person, their illnesses are different. 49%, we talked about that earlier, of have at least one chronic condition. 25%, have more than one. We've got, if you break, 25% have one, you got 11% that have two, 7% that have three, 4% that have four, 3% that have five. That's 10 million people have 5 or more chronic illnesses. And a lot of times you'll have, there's what I guess they call the term comorbidity, where they have these different chronic illnesses that go together, right? You may have one, and so that brings about another. So it says multiples, but they're individual to each individual. So one person may have MS and Lyme disease like my wife has. That's different than somebody who has MS and arthritis. And so what happens is, because of this, the difference is that we all have uniqueness to what we're about. And so we may think that somebody with MS, and we hear this all the time, my wife hears this, well, my aunt's got MS and she runs 5 miles a day. That's great, right? Awesome. But somebody else may have MS that impacts them differently, and they may not be in a wheelchair because a wheelchair is not necessarily indicative of how bad an illness is necessarily. It just means you're unable to use your legs. You need a wheelchair. But in my wife's case, she uses a wheelchair when I have to push her around. We go to, go out shopping too far, use a wheelchair, or take a scooter and she can use that. These are the differences that Johns Hopkins found in the number of chronic illnesses based upon your age, right? So as you get older, you actually get more chronic illnesses, right? You get 2 or more as you get older. What's interesting is they actually found that there was a drop in, so it's all on the rise, continuing on the rise, the number of chronic illness. They found that there was a drop in one population where that rise wasn't as much. Anybody hedge to guess? If it was, kids, teens, middle-aged, seniors, anybody guess what that rise? Kids. Actually, seniors. See, they did a study where 20 years ago, they measured how many bags of groceries a senior could carry that was age 60. They could carry 1 bag of groceries. Today they can carry 2 bags of groceries. The reason why is the seniors actually are starting to take better care of themselves in a lot of cases. And so there's a drop in that rise. Everybody eventually, though, gets these chronic illnesses, and it just happens as we get older. Sometimes I never know what to say, right? Because this is a big part of it. This is what But You Look Good is about, that Kathy brought up about our book. Because we don't know what to say, right? We think we know what to say, but a lot of times what we say can come across as discouraging. So one thing is, don't claim that, that it doesn't exist because you can't see it, right? So you've probably heard these quotes, well, but you look good. That's what we call the book about. Because my wife looks really good. Nancy knows. Allie knows. My wife looks really good. But she's been disabled, not just disabled, but disabled since 1991, since she was 27 years old. She still looks incredible. She's the reason why we coined the phrase invisible. She coined the phrase invisible disabilities back in 1996, because we'd park in disabled parking and people would scream at us. But you don't look sick, right? We've probably all heard, well, but do you? Well, maybe you don't want to look sick. You put on some makeup so you don't look sick, right? This is always the battle when you go to the doctor, right? If you try to look nice when you go to the doctor, what's the doctor think? You don't look sick. So then you try to, okay, I'll just go like I normally would get out of bed and go, right? And so, or it's all in your head. We've heard that one before, right? Well, maybe it is in my head. Maybe it's a brain tumor. Maybe it's MS. Maybe it's bipolar. Maybe it's Chiari. Maybe that's all in my head, right? It really is in your head, but that's not what they mean by that. Or my favorite, you just want attention, right? Right? In fact, I just wrote a blog about this, because guess what you don't get? You don't get attention. In fact, everybody runs. So if you really wanted attention, getting sick is not the best way to do it, right? Because you get to the opposite. People always think that, oh, you just want attention. No, actually, you're just not listening to them. So don't minimize their situation, right? It's not that bad. It could be worse. Death. I don't know. Some cases, the pain's pretty bad. Or you're lucky you don't have to work, right? Lucky they don't hit you, for saying that, right? So don't minimize their situation. And I don't think people are trying to be mean. I think they're really just they don't understand. They need to learn what I call learn the language of invisible disabilities. They need to learn this language. Don't disregard their limitations. Come on, you can do it, right? Now, that's something you say to somebody who was in an injury and they're trying to learn to walk again. Yeah, you do want to encourage them. But when you've been chronically ill for 30 years, it's not like you're going to snap out of being chronically ill. So how about you always say no? Right? Oh, you always say no. Every time I ask you to go somewhere, you always say no. Well, maybe because I can't do what you're asking me to do, right? So I'm going to always say no. Or you're better off when you push yourself. If you'd only get out and walk more. Or maybe, you need to exercise, get some fresh air. That'll just get out of bed, that'll be better. Or you're just giving up, right? We've heard that one. Just giving up. Don't claim they're not trying hard enough. This is part of it. What do you mean? You could get better if you wanted to, right? If you wanted to, right? Well, seriously, how many people, and you don't have to give me a show of hands, would be like, want to get better, right? Everybody in here wants to get better, right? Plus going to doctors is no fun, despite what people think they say. They're not. It's not. And what do you do all day long? You spend all day long on the internet. This is something they always people ask me, well, what's your wife do all day long? Well, it's not sitting around watching Oprah, I can tell you that. It's insurance, it's researching, it's trying to find, it's communicating with other people, it's insurance, the insurance. something like that. It's doctor's insurance, you know. In fact, one year, a longtime friend of hers asked her, you know, so what are you doing for your MS, right? And so she keeps track of being a good project manager of her illness, like most of you probably are. She keeps the spreadsheet and everything, and she's like, she sent it to her. She had gone to the doctor or therapies 240 times the previous year. There you go, that's what I'm doing, you know. It's like, you want to know? This is what I'm doing. So maybe you're just being lazy, right? You're just lazy, right? Okay, I knew lazy people. I went to college with some of them. We know lazy people. People that are trying to run that marathon each day, getting out of bed, is not being lazy. Okay, how about another one? Don't act as if you can relate. I know what you mean. I'm always tired too, right? Let's see. We went to the opera last night, and I took my kids to the zoo, and I worked today. I'm tired too. Actually, bone-crushing exhaustion that you can't sleep, which people don't get that. When you're so tired you can't sleep. Okay, that's a different thing. Or, you know, join the club. Whew. I can't get anything done either, you know. Or, you know, I wish I could have a maid come clean my house. It's like, yeah, I wish a maid would come clean my house too, right? It is not happening. So the reality is it's not about that you can relate. And it's a discouraging thing when people say that. And like I said, they're trying to figure out a way to relate. Okay? They're just not doing the best job at it yet. But we want to help them learn how to do that best job. So don't give them advice all the time. You know, why don't you just do this, right? How about this? Why don't you take Tylenol? Right? Actually, my wife was told that for her pain. It's like, hello, you think I would have thought about that, right? Well, can't you just take something? You know, hasn't your doctor figured this out by now? There's something you can take, right? Or, I know, I've got a green drink. It took care of my friend. It can take care of you, right? But the reality is this is back to that individual thing. It may have helped your friend, right? But that doesn't mean it helps everybody. In fact, they talk about the drugs that are produced that as long as they help 30%, you can get them approved. They don't help 100%. I mean, that's why you have aspirin, acetaminophen, naproxen sodium, you know, all these different, just on painkillers, just the basic painkillers, because everybody reacts differently, and what they're going through is different. Okay, how about this? Do not try to tell them how they feel. You'll like this one. You look like you're feeling well today. You're here. You guys must be doing great. You must be doing better. You must be having a good day. When in reality this may be the only thing you came to this month. And I'm honored that you came, by the way. So thank you so much. Because I know that. I know what it takes to be here. And people need to understand that. When you're invited to Thanksgiving dinner and you haven't gone for a couple years and you come, they should thank you for that. Don't try to point out what they still have, right? You know, well, at least you have a nice husband, maybe. You know, at least you drive a nice car or something. Or, well, at least you're not as sick as so-and-so, but we don't know that, right? You can't, well, at least you're not in a wheelchair, or at least you're not, I mean, people come up with all these at least you're nots, right? Or, why don't you look on the bright side? You know, I bet you everybody in this room counts their blessings every single day. I bet you do that. And so when people say count your blessings, you know, that's not what they're meaning. You know what it means. You know if that marathon you overcame today was, sweet, I got out to the store today and went shopping, finally, for food. You know, that lettuce is getting old. It's time for new lettuce. But that's not what they're saying. Or, you know, look on the bright side. You know, the reality is that, you know, having a chronic illness is a difficult thing. And don't expect them to always be happy, right? Just be positive. We've all heard that. Just be positive. The reality is, if you understand grieving, when you sustain a loss and you become chronically ill, you lose who you were. You're different. You actually got a second loss. You lose who you were going to be, right? Because now you got to change. It's different, you know? I mean, maybe you ran marathons before. You don't run marathons now like you did before. Now it's, Marathon is from the bed to the couch to the bathroom to the kitchen, right? That's your marathon. But it really is, it's not about being positive. When you're going through grieving, you're angry. That's one of your steps of grieving, right? You're in denial. That's one of the steps. Guess what? You're depressed. And I'll tell you what, if you've been chronically ill for 30 years in chronic pain, it's okay to be depressed for a little bit. You know, life sometimes is rough. You know, we find this out on our online social networks that sometimes people will use some expletives when they talk about their illness. Now we have to decide, is it because they just have a foul mouth, or maybe it hurts that bad, right? And sometimes that's how it comes out. I mean, the reality is, so we can't expect people to always be positive, you know, or don't cry, just kind of cheer up. You know, it'll all be over someday. Well, it may be, but that may be the end of your life, right? Chronic means chronic. It doesn't mean fatal necessarily. It means it continues on. So, and remember, in this whole vastness of this human race, we are all individuals, and all our illnesses are unique to us. We need to become the experts in these things. That's why we can't expect our doctors to be. But the reality is, but we're all part of the human race together, right? We all have value. You know, I think about how people say, well, we want to get everybody to be more productive, right? Okay, if you can work, and there's some way you can work, great. But what if you're unable to work? Does that mean you lose value because you're not productive, you're not making widgets, you're not moving ourselves? No, you shouldn't be, because you're part of this human race. You all have value. You know, and I'll tell you what, spend time with somebody who's been chronically ill for 30 years and your life will be transformed. The fact that every day they get out of bed. I know the pain my wife's in. You know, so she's in all this crazy pain, and then the day after Christmas she breaks her ankle. And it wasn't doing anything crazy. It just like the tendon pulled the ankle and broke the bone, right? You know, so now I'm thinking, wow, that pain's on top of that pain. I'm thinking I would have been out cold, you know, for days with the kind of pain that she's dealing with. And she can't take pain medicines because she has chemical sensitivity, if many of you know what that is, and so she can't take all. So she just, you know, and we're hoping to get an MRI soon and find out if they can actually do anything with it. But the reality is that it's all individual, and we're all in this human race together, and we all have value. So let's treat people like they have value, right? So what's the fifth reality? The fifth reality is to believe, right? I mean, that's the key. It's not believe in me, it's believe me, right? It's when I come to your house for dinner this month, and I can't do it next month, don't think that it's because I don't want to go. Maybe it's because of my illness. You know, we had one of our, we do galas every year for our organization here in town. They're in October, which is a disability month. We do them at the end of Invisible Disabilities Week, which is the third week in October. And one of our gala chairs a few years ago is a professional woman here in town, a big philanthropist who was like the lead lady at Lockheed. She was getting ready to speak to 8,000 women down in Florida to Lockheed, and she got a brain tumor, right? I mean, brilliant lady, brain tumor, right? Boom, she's out. Well, she also got lupus, okay? Unable to work anymore, right? Well, still being a philanthropist, she loves going to events. And so I asked her, I said, would you share your story at our gala, right? First thing is like, oh my goodness, you know, share my story. Okay, so she shared her story. And there were all these people in the room that knew her. They had no idea that the reason why she didn't come to their event because she was at home sick in bed. They thought, well, she just doesn't like me anymore. She's not coming to support me at my event. And we make these assumptions about that, and we need to not make these assumptions. We need to believe people. So, we started a little campaign even this year. It's called Resolve to Believe. You know, I want to resolve to believe you. This year at our gala, our Inspiration Award is going to be going to Yolanda Foster. Many of you may know who Yolanda Foster is, Real Housewife of Beverly Hills, married to David Foster, you know, not much longer. They're actually getting divorced. But credible age, she has Lyme disease, like my wife has, okay? Well, but what's crazy is that everybody thinks, oh, she's just making this up because she's sick one moment and she looks so beautiful the next moment. Well, ever heard of makeup and soft lighting and all these things? You know, but people don't believe her. In fact, her co-stars are actually questioning, is she really sick? You know, but this is what happens is people start to question people. Give you another example. Our last year's Invisible Inspiration Award is called But You Look Good. Our award that we do is our Inspiration Award, is one of our awards, is a young lady named Mandy Harvey. And Mandy is actually one of our ambassadors, and I'd love for you to go check her out on our website. Amazing. Mandy is profoundly deaf. She went deaf about 10 years ago at the age of 18, and she's a jazz singer. Okay, and let me tell you, will blow you away, jazz singer. She is absolutely incredible, and she cannot hear you. She's been married 4 years and never heard her husband's voice. Okay, now think about this. When she goes to fly, okay, you know, her legs work, everything. She can't hear. She goes to fly, they put her in disabled seating. And people go, well, she's not disabled. Why would she sit there? Because she can't tell when the plane changes or the gate changes, and they need to know where she's sitting, right? Now, if somebody comes up and needs the seat because they can't stand, she'll get up and stand next to it. But people don't believe her because of that. They also don't believe when you're on an interview with her, which is really amazing, is on the radio interview, because I've been there and I've talked to her on the phone, is you can't tell that there's any lag or anything like that. And you're like, well, she can really hear. I mean, she has this really cool app, closed captioning app, and there's some person somewhere in the US or around the world somewhere that's typing what I'm saying to her, and she's reading it and she's responding instantaneously. And it's crazy cool. And it's free, by the way. So if you ever need that feature, it's really cool. It's on and I wrote about it on this blog. But people think she's just making this up. Because she reads lips really, really well. Okay? But the reality is, it's because she's using this assistive device, this tool that allows her. So it's really about this believing issue. And we have to believe people. And we don't. So I found this really cool cartoon many years ago. So, you're in good health. But you may be about to develop a condition that's not covered by your health insurance. What's so funny is this cartoon's like 20 years old and it's so apropos today, actually more than it ever was. But then I'll get the coverage. Okay. You can't afford the coverage. Wow. Okay. Then I'll make my employer pay for it. Well, then he'll drop your insurance altogether. Okay. Well, let's figure out who else can pay for it. Then I'll get the government to pay for it. Well, that will cause taxes to go up and put your employer out of business. Wow. Okay, this is getting kind of crazy here. Then I'll wait till they find a cure, right? I mean, we're all waiting for that, right? Well, they found one, but you can't afford the prescription. This is sounding pretty hopeless here, actually. Stop, you're making me crazy. That's the condition not covered. And we all know that. I mean, it's the 20 hours a week on the phone with Medicare or somebody trying to get somebody that actually understands what they're talking about to call you back. And actually, you know. But actually, if you look at the bottom here, I'm just not going to think about that's how everybody else is handling it, right? This is what people think. They don't think that we're having to deal with this whole world of we're just sitting around eating bonbons and watching Oprah or Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, whatever it is. I don't know when that is on, by the way. I don't even have cable, so. But think about it. It's really insidious when a person explains their debilitating illness, right? People want to know, so they ask you. So you explain it, right? And they still refuse to believe you. Well, you just asked me, and I just told you. Because they look okay on the outside, right? You know, we don't know if the disease or injury may have eaten away or damaged the brain. We don't know what else is going on the inside. We have no idea somebody had a transplanted heart, right? And how many times do people, when they find out, they're like, oh, I didn't know. Well, I told you. We don't know all those things that are damaged on the inside, you know, and we don't want to assume that somebody using a wheelchair can or can't do something either, right? We see somebody in a wheelchair and we think, they can't do things. Well, many of you know in Colorado there's sled hockey, there's rugby, there's basketball, there's skiing, all for people who use wheelchairs. So it's really not the wheelchair that's the issue. What if they have chronic pain? What if they have PTSD? It's those invisible symptoms that really impact, you know. And so we don't want to just make this assumption that if we can't see it, that it's not real. Now, what's the sixth reality? Okay, so we had vast, We found it was invisible, that, see if I get my letters right here. Yeah, it was invisible. And then the S, which is that society has a perceptions of it. And then I is that it's invisible. And then we want to believe people, correct? Because that's really the key bottom line, is believing people. But really, the sixth one is that we want to love people. Now, this is an action word. Not like, ooh, gooey, gooey, I love you. But it's really about, what can I do? It's love in action. It's doing something. So back to I never know what to say that discourages them. Really, let's talk about some things that do encourage you, right? And let's hope that these are encouraging things that people can do. Acknowledge their situation, right? Acknowledge, acknowledge, acknowledge. How many times have you heard that all they ever want to do is talk about their illness, right? All they ever want to do, right? Well, you know why people say that? Why people want to talk about that? Because you're not listening, right? You're not listening to them. If you would sit and listen to them, acknowledge what they're going through. I can't believe you've gone through this, you know? I can't believe the things you've had to do, the surgeries. I mean, I hear these stories, you know? 35 surgeries. It's like, holy smokes, you know? I haven't ever had one. I would probably, I don't even know if I can handle one, right? But but that's what people do. But acknowledge. It must be difficult. Getting here tonight must be difficult. Acknowledge their losses. This is that whole thing of, you know, I'm so sorry you can't work anymore. What a bummer. My wife would love to work. She's got 3 college degrees. She'd love to work. We're trying to figure out a way that she can work 5 hours a month and make, you know, 10 grand or something like that. So we're working on it. Maybe someday we'll figure it out. And no, those people that call on the phone and say, have I got a home thing for you to do? No, not one of those. You know, I can't imagine what you've been through. You know, that's a great thing to say. I can't imagine it. Because the reality is, if you haven't been there, you can't imagine it. How about respect their boundaries and limitations, right? You know, we'd like to get together, so what kinds of things do you enjoy doing? What can we do together? Who's the best person to ask? You, the person who's dealing with an illness. That's the person you ask. But how do you ask a person that's walking on the street that you don't know? You don't. You have to know people. You have to get to know them, be their friend. Then ask them, what can we do together? If you can't make it, I'll understand. Now this is a cool thing, right? Make a pact with your friend that says, I'm going to invite you to, maybe they go to the Rockies hockey games, right? And they got tickets, and they like to invite you, but you know, it's like really, really hard for you to go. Maybe they make a pact that says, I will invite you every time, and you can say no every time. And that's okay. The problem is we don't make that pact, right? They ask 3 times and they stop. That's it. No, we need to get friends and family to say, let's make that pact forever. Let's do that. And it's okay for you to say no every time. I get it. But what if they say that yes once? Awesome. But don't go, well, you must be feeling better. No, the reality is maybe they just wanted to spend time with you. And they just knew that sacrifice of, you know, I'm going to pay for it for 3 weeks afterwards, but I want to do that. Set up those pacts. Show them you're aware of their circumstances, right? You know, I'm so glad you're here. I know if it is a huge sacrifice for you to be here. And I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. And I know what a sacrifice it is. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that because of those loss of dreams, sometimes you got to find new dreams in a sense. Maybe you like going camping, right? And now you can't. You can't go backpacking, okay? Because it's just too hard to take the whole family and go backpack. Set up the tent in the backyard. Have the camping there, right? Or have a game night. We love playing games. My wife and I love playing games because one thing that we all know that laughter does, it does help, and it's fun to have, and it's fun to do things, right? It doesn't take any energy to do that, right? In a sense. But those are things to find those new things to do. But show them you're aware of the circumstances, you know? Wow. Amazing. Show them you're listening. You know, last year our gala, our theme was called Hearing is Believing, not Seeing is Believing. Because guess what? Seeing is not believing anymore thanks to Photoshop. Right? We can put whatever we want. But it's not about seeing. What if it's invisible? Then you can't see it. But hearing is sitting down, listening, and maybe asking questions like this. Instead of saying, how are you feeling? right? I mean, that's always, everybody always asks that question, right? Every Sunday at church or whatever, how's your wife feeling? Other than me saying, why don't you call her and find out? Which I did that a few times too. But she feels like she's felt for the last 30 years, right? So instead of saying that, because really you put somebody who's ill on a strange spot, they either have to lie to you and say, I'm feeling great, and they're not, or they tell you the truth, which you don't want to hear, right? So why don't we do this? Why don't we ask them how they're doing, right? A little nuance. How are you doing? I'm doing okay, I'm not feeling good, right? So listen, how about things like, maybe I really do want to know what's going on. Tell me about your illness. Tell me about what Chiari is, or that other word that starts with an S. Wait, Syringomyelia or something like that. Okay, that word. I don't know what that is, but you know what? I bet Kathy knows what that is. Kathy would be a great person to talk to. See, that's where you take interest in somebody, right? Listen to them. Sit down and say, I'd like to learn about it, because you are probably the expert. I bet you Nancy knows more about her illnesses than majority of the doctors out there. And I bet if I asked her, she would be more than happy to share that with me so I can learn about it. But that's what you do, You are experts in a lot of areas. So show them you're listening. Give them a compliment, right? This is not, but you look good. This is, your hair looks nice today. We can do that, right? I like this. I wish you could feel as good as you look, right? I mean, that's a good one, right? Because the reality is, what it took to get rid of the not looking sick thing today so I could be here to not look sick, those things. But really, give them a true compliment. How about show them your admiration? I can't believe how strong you are. That's what's amazing, is the strength that people have that are chronically ill, that power to get through each day. That's incredible to me. You keep fighting, right? Think about how many people you've known over the years have stopped fighting, right? And you do. Every day you keep fighting, keep fighting. Show them you're willing to help. Okay, now here's the cool thing. I'm going to the store already. Can I pick you something up? Right now, you're not putting me out, but I'm already going to the store, so why don't I pick something up for you? Or make a pact with a friend and say, can I bring you lunch once a month? That's it. Not do I have to come change your diapers or anything like that. I'm just going to bring you lunch, something simple. Can you imagine what it would be like to have somebody come to your house once a month and just bring you lunch? Or maybe it's even a quick phone call. Or can I wash some dishes while I'm there? I'm going to come over once a month, spend an hour with you. Huge things that make a big, big difference in somebody's life. And let them know we appreciate our own health. This is my wife's always telling me this way, and you need to make sure you watch out for your own health, right? Because the key is two of us would be even harder at home. But appreciate, oh man, I really need to make sure that I'm appreciating my own health. That's a big part of it too. So what's the seventh reality? Seventh reality is up to everyone. Okay? This is not you guys have to go change the world. We need to do this together. We need to get society to understand that people have value. They're not bad because they're ill. We think about this. Like there's something wrong with you because you're ill. Because what do we grow up with? The doctor, take this and the cold's gone. But that's acute stuff. Chronic stuff doesn't go away. You're not a bad person for having an illness. Did you contribute to your illness? Could be. I had a lady come to our organization. She was a stunt woman and she had a traumatic brain injury. And you're thinking, aha. But the reality is they do everything to mitigate having traumatic brain injuries. Everything. She's not any less of a person because that was part of what had happened in her life. So we can't go blaming people because we find a cause or don't find a cause. But it really is up to all of us. So there's 7 realities, right? The biggest blockade people have is worrying about what to say. They don't know what to say. So a lot of times they say things that come out that we talked about that are discouraging. Because they think they have to talk about the illness too, right? Or come up with some kind of solution to your illness. It's just amazing to me. My wife's been ill since 1991. Okay? It's like 25 years. And she's tried it all. but find out. But people always say, well, hey, I read this. Have you tried this? It depends on how you put it, right? How you present it. She actually has her own website, and on her website she has a page that says, hey, if you got something you want to share with me about the illness, put it in here. I'd like to know. Maybe I haven't tried it. But that's not typically what people say, because they get mad because you need to do their thing that they want you to do, because maybe you don't want to get better. But we don't have to feel pressured, to come up with these things. It's not about, they don't want to talk about it. How many times have you wanted to talk about, like, the Denver Broncos or something, right? And that's all you want to talk about. You don't want to talk about your illness. You live it. Maybe you just want to talk about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Maybe you want to talk about, the fact that I had 4 feet of snow in my house yesterday, which I did. And I had to dig out my kids, which are my 2 little goats, Pumpkin and Cookie. And they have more Facebook followers than I do. Yeah, they're just amazing little creatures. They're actually therapy goats for my wife, because when she goes out there and they have their own children's book and everything. They're crazy little amazing things. But those are things we like talking about. We don't want to talk about illnesses, except for maybe that first time when you're trying to get them to understand a little bit better, and they need to listen to you, acknowledge it, and then let's talk about all those other things. You don't want to talk about your illness all day long. Gee whiz, you got to live with it. Nothing's worse than having to deal with that. So, and you don't want an answer necessarily from people. It's funny, an illness is like the one thing everybody's got to have an answer for or something. They got to come up with some kind of solution for you. A lot of other things they don't. I'm finally finding out that at least people, they only want help if you ask them. So that's what they should do, is ask, did you want some help? Can I help you? Can I do those things? But you're the expert and you should know. So what are these? Vast, right? Invisible, society, individual. We want to believe people. We want to love them. Do action, do things. You know what's really cool? I wrote a blog about hope, about this whole issue of hope. People think that hope is this thing out there. I hope I get through the illness. But you know what's hope? Is with somebody who's dealing with a chronic illness, sits down with a kid who's developmentally disabled and reads them a children's book. That's hope. Or somebody who's dealing with an illness encourages another person to say, you know what? I've made it 15 years. I hope we can do this together. That's hope. It's hope in the human spirit, right? That's the hope. It's not about this out there thing. So love, and it's up to everyone, which really is the word visible. That's what we want people to be. We want it to be visible. In the end, either a visible or invisible disability, it doesn't matter, right? It's not about us or them or these things. All they want is for us to believe them. They don't expect us to understand unless we've been there, right? You can't understand it. I can't fathom the pain that you guys go through. I have no clue. I guess if I tweak my toe or something, I get the flu or something, my wife's like, you got to feel different. No, she doesn't say that. She's actually very compassionate, by the way, even though I'm like a wimp and go in the other bedroom, honey, because I don't want to get sick. But she's, I'm like, I got a cold, I'm going to die or something. But they just want us to believe what they have to say, right? You just want people to believe you, listen to you, value you. So envision a world where people living with illness, pain, and disability will be invisible no more. Thank you.